Surprise, surprise, yet another Minecraft creator is embroiled in controversy, this time being the Twitch streamer Punz, who ironically called out Wilbur Soot for having a poor response to his allegations. So let's see how he did with responding to his own. But first we have to see what the initial allegations actually are. But before that, I have to talk about the sponsor of today's video, HelloFresh. We all need to eat, but sometimes we don't have the money or the time to eat in a way that we should, which is why I'm so glad HelloFresh exists. They are America's #1 meal kit that delivers the exact amount of ingredients you need and the instructions you need in order to cook quality meals for yourself. And what meals you get can be adjusted towards your lifestyle and what you want. Like, you could get quick and easy meals, or you could choose options like calorie smart and protein smart recipes. And with my code, you'll be able to get an additional dessert for free with every box while your subscription is active. So if you're interested in HelloFresh, be sure to click the link in the description or use my code and get 16 free meals plus 1 dessert for life while subscription is active. Thank you so much to HelloFresh for sponsoring this video. But for now, let's get back to it. So Andivmg posts the allegations on her Tumblr with the title, "My Experience with Luke, Punz. Content warning, toxic relationship, racism, dubious consent." I know in the past I said I would no longer speak about him publicly, and when talking about my experiences with abuse and emotional mistreatment, I begged to keep it anonymous. But after reflecting on this for a week, and seeing so many incredibly smart and strong women tell their stories, they have given me the strength to say his name. This is really scary to talk about, because of the copious levels of harassment I have received from his fans in the past. So if this spreads or gets out of hand, I will simply log off. If you read my last post, I nicknamed him One. So aside from everything I said there were a lot of things I didn't include because it would have made it obvious that it was him and could potentially backfire on me. So I'm very afraid to post this, but I'm going to do it scared anyway, because it's not fair that he gets to just go on and live his life worry-free as if he didn't practically ruin mine. Because I already made a lengthy post about him, I won't include everything I said last time to avoid being redundant. But if I repeat myself, please bear with me. In our year-long relationship, I had to endure emotional neglect, gaslighting, verbal abuse, one instance where there was dubious consent, and much more. Starting off at the beginning of our relationship, that's when I was getting copious amounts of hate and harassment from his fan base, warranted or not. He decided that our relationship must be kept private. He said it was to protect me from his fan base, when in reality, it was to protect himself. It was so he wouldn't get all the backlash I was getting. This is funny because one of the things I got called out for was saying the B slur, derogatory term used against Mexicans/Latinos. I won't get into the nuances of if I could say it or not as a Puerto Rican, because that's discourse that does not pertain to this specific situation. But you know who definitely can't say it? A white boy from Massachusetts. When I was getting cancelled for this, and getting thousands of tweets calling me names, he decided it was a perfect time to say, "I mean, you are a B, aren't you, my little B?" Now, he said this completely unprompted. I was in the process of writing my apology, and he just said that. I can tell you this because I immediately shut him down and told him that there was no universe in which it was okay for him to say that word, and especially not one where he could just call me that. While I was reprimanding him, he was smiling and laughing. He apparently found it amusing to call me a slur. Regardless, he gave me a half-assed apology and said he wouldn't do it again, and he didn't. But this wasn't the only time he was weirdly racist to me. This was my first time being in an interracial relationship, so I was led to believe this was normal by all the white people around me at the time. But sometimes my Spanish accent would come out, and he would make fun of me in the way I pronounced some words. He also refused to visit me in Puerto Rico when I lived there, or come meet my family when I really wanted him to because he didn't like the heat, or "it's dangerous there, isn't it?" Once, while we were watching season 2 of Bridgerton, he implied that the Sharma sisters are too dark for him to be attracted to them. This hurt me because they are brown-skinned girls. I am a brown-skinned girl. Then this, combined with the fact that he told me once he wasn't attracted to me, made me feel like my skin color was unattractive. These are only a few examples I can think of at the moment, but I'm sure there were more. Our relationship ended in 2022, so some of my memory is a bit hazy, but I do remember feeling inferior to him throughout the relationship, because he was white and I was not. I chalked that up to all the microaggressions I had to deal with because I had never felt that way around white people before. Another thing I had to endure was him constantly making me feel like he was embarrassed to be with me. Because I was cancelled, he didn't want to associate with me too much. He did defend me on multiple occasions, I'll give him that, but he only did it because his name was getting dragged in the mud along with mine. fine. Excusing my actions made him look better for being around me. In reality, he didn't really care, because he was such a big content creator, and someone I looked up to professionally. I took his advice as law. He told me to tone down my personality, to keep a low profile, to change things about myself to be more palatable to his audience. The same audience that spoke about me like, "The pussy can't be that good, Punz, please stop defending her." So I changed a lot of things about myself and my content to better suit what his audience liked. He made me feel like if his audience liked me, he would be public about our relationship and stop hiding it. He told me the reason why he wanted to keep our relationship a secret was because he didn't want to get hate for it, but this wasn't true. On my 20th birthday, he went to Las Vegas for a Twitch Rivals event. That night, I asked to FaceTime with him to say goodnight, and he refused because he was at a hotel room with his friends and didn't want them to know that we were together. It was as if my mere presence or the utterance of my name was a source of embarrassment for him, and he didn't let me forget it. It wasn't just a public thing at that point. He didn't want people to know we were together, period. This was devastating to me because I would talk to all my friends about him. I was so proud to be with him, and was just one more problem to him. He made me feel so small and insignificant just because his fans didn't like me. He would berate me a lot, not just due to getting heat online, although he did that a lot, but in general, whenever he would get into an argument or a disagreement, he would always call me names like annoying or weird or stupid. He would raise his voice at me if I did something he didn't like and call me an idiot, and it really hurt. I felt like I couldn't bring up anything or do anything without getting insulted. If I hadn't seen him in a few days because he was too busy streaming and I asked to hang out, he would call me needy, clingy, and annoying. Granted, he might not have been wrong, but that is not something you say to someone you claim to love. He also insulted me when I was in depressive episodes. I have borderline personality disorder, and at the time I was not being treated properly for it, so I was all over the place emotionally, and he is what I clung on to for validation, reassurance, and love. I talked to him when we first started dating about my disorder, and told him that if it seemed like something he couldn't handle, that he could opt out of the relationship. I guess he didn't think it was that bad or something. I don't know, because whenever I had really bad depressive episodes, he would tell me I was too sad to hang out with. He said that my sadness was a burden to him, which would be fair, but once my mother had a conversation with him about me, she told him that I am someone who needs a lot of love and caring. She said that if he wasn't willing to put in that kind of effort into a relationship, to just leave me alone. He reassured her that he would be there for me no matter what. He told my mother that he would protect me and my heart. He did not. He took all the warnings I gave him and ignored them, and then made me feel like I was the problem. And even worse, he would say that I was pretending to be sad to get his attention, when he would neglect me for days at a time. There were also some smaller things, like the fact that he made me feel really guilty whenever he would spend money on me. Also, he would be really mean about my eating habits. For context, I used to suffer from an eating disorder. I was anorexic and had a really unhealthy relationship with food during high school and my first year of uni. This relationship began when I was recovering from my eating disorder. For me, eating was really hard, so I had certain comfort foods that, while sometimes unhealthy, at least it was something to eat when I didn't feel like eating anything. He knew this. Yet, whenever I would crave some of these foods, he would call me fat. Constantly told me I'd gain weight from eating all that junk food. Saying that to someone with an eating disorder is crazy. Other small things that were whenever I would post TikToks where I was lip syncing or just looking good, he would yell at me and say I was looking for attention. Same with Instagram or Twitter whenever I would post photos where I looked hot. He never planned out a single date for us. I would beg him to get me flowers, and he did maybe once, but I'll get into that in a bit. He would make fun of me in front of his friends to make himself look better. He let his friends say really degrading things about me in his presence. For example, once when I was showering, I overheard him on a Discord call with George and Sapnap, and I heard George say, "If you don't go in the shower and have sex with Andy, I will." Once when I was really struggling with my legs, for those of you who don't know, I have arthritis and it's very painful. At the time I wasn't diagnosed, but I was in a lot of pain. I literally could not walk. I had to beg him to take me to the emergency room because I didn't know what was wrong with me. He didn't want to take me, but I eventually convinced him. And while we were there, all he did was complain about how long it was taking and that he would have rather been at home streaming. Whenever I would talk about my interests that I was excited about, like shows or books, he would be incredibly uninterested and say that those things were stupid and he didn't want to hear about them. I know all of these seem really silly or superficial, but cumulatively it was awful. Now for arguably the most serious thing I'm going to talk about. I want to preface this by saying I'm just telling you my side of what happened. You can come to your own conclusions about this. On April 25th, 2022, it was our 1-year anniversary, and I made a dinner reservation for us. I expected him to plan something throughout the day for us to do. He told me he was going to spend the whole day playing Valorant, so I got upset and canceled the reservation. After a very heated argument, we calmed down, and I asked him to come over. He came over about an hour later with flowers and drinks. I was 20 at the time, so I couldn't buy the drinks myself. He bought Smirnoffs and Trulies, families. For context, I am a lightweight. I always have been. I literally get tipsy on half a cocktail. And that day, I hadn't eaten anything because I was in distress over our argument. So we get to talking and drinking. I blacked out after my second Smirnoff. Apparently, I drank 3, but I genuinely cannot remember anything after finishing the second one. The next morning, I woke up naked in my bed. I woke him up and asked him, "Luke, why am I naked?" And he said, "Because you didn't want to put your clothes back on." When I clarified to him that that was not what I meant, he got defensive and said he didn't realize how drunk I was. He proceeded to tell me that I initiated sex with him, and I was very enthusiastic about it. He said he didn't know I could black out on 3 Smirnoffs. He made fun of me for being a lightweight and continued to make light of the situation. Then he mentioned that I fell off the bed at some point in the night, and that it was funny how drunk I was. I then questioned him, because if he thought that me tripping and falling off the bed because I was so drunk was funny, how did he not know that I was too drunk? He responded by saying that I fell off the bed only after we were done. That day, I broke up with him. I'm still really confused about what happened that night. I don't remember anything, and all I have to go on is what he said to me. We were in a relationship at the time, and he says he didn't know how drunk I was, so I'm not sure what to call what happened. A while after that day, his friend that hit me up while we were broken up and I started talking again, and I confided in him about that night. He told me to be careful saying things like that, because they could get me into trouble. I spoke to some of our other friends about it, and they told me it was no big deal, and that it wasn't his fault and he didn't know how drunk I really was. Because I don't remember, I have been led to believe that this is not a serious matter. You can think what you want. Come to whatever conclusions you want. That is just my side of the story. I wanted to add that I'm not proud of how I acted after the relationship ended. I felt really angry at all the shit he put me through, and I guess a part of me wanted him to hurt even a quarter of how I did. So I started talking to his friend and got involved with him. This backfired on me because his friend ended up hurting me too, so I guess I got my karma. But the thing that hurt the most is that because of what I did, some of our friends took his side in the breakup. I was told that I did something terrible by getting involved with his friend, that he was already insecure about, and that he didn't deserve that. These are the same friends who were witness to the dumpster fire of a relationship we had and all the things he did to me. They turned their backs on me because of this one thing I did, but stood by and watched as he treated me like garbage for over a year. I will conclude this by saying that while this relationship has been done and over with for almost 2 years now, I carry a lot of trauma from it still. I still talk about him in therapy and have had to put in a lot of work to heal from what he did, and I can still not say that I am okay. I am very blessed now to have a patient and understanding partner who has helped me heal from that trauma, and I just want to quickly thank him for that. Nobody deserves to go through what I did. While yes, it was a toxic relationship, and I had a part in that, it does not excuse all the awful things he said and did to me. This is my truth. Thank you for taking the time to read it. And now for Punz response to all of this on Twitter. He tweets out, "I removed my art from my profile in respect and by request of the artist. I would like to start this off by saying that in no way do I intend to invalidate victims in this statement. I unequivocally stand with victims of sexual assault. These are very serious allegations being brought against me, and I would like to treat them as such. I will directly be referring to statements with quotes from Andy's posts regarding me. Background. This statement is giving more context to a relationship I had with Andi, Andivmg. There's a few main takeaways I feel are important. I felt during and after processing our relationship that Andi and I's personalities were incompatible. This caused a lot of clashing, constant arguments, and stress on both of us. I felt like because of this, on both sides, it brought out the worst of us. I do not stand by all of my actions during this relationship. I feel as though they do not represent the person I am today. I don't want to focus on small details as to not take away from my main points and defenses, but I would like to shed some light on some of her exaggerations and untrue allegations as well as provide my perspective so you can see that this was not one-sided situations with me as a perpetrator and her as a victim, but how much of our relationship consisted of an extremely toxic dynamic with inexcusable behavior on both sides. Dubious consent. I'd like to start by addressing the night of April 25th, as referred to in Andi's statement, while also bringing up context she talked about in her Tumblr post on February 27th, 2024. I'd like to tread carefully on this sensitive topic, but also stay firm on the fact that I did not and would not take advantage of anyone ever. I realize that this is all my word against hers, so I would like to explain my experience in the most concise way possible, and let you form your own opinions. In the prior post, she mentioned something that did stand true, which was that there was a long period of time with zero intimacy that was because of myself. My lack of libido has followed me for many years, and thus caused issues in multiple relationships, even having me wondering if I am possibly asexual, because I'm not meeting the standards of my partners. I am saying this to further explain that I am in no way a sexual or horny person. I was not the one to initiate sex often at all. I've always worked hard to validate and support past victims of sexual assault, including my own partners, which is why I am asking you to understand my point of view and my recollection of the night of April 25th. 25th. Explicit warning, somewhat vivid depictions of sexual encounter. Necessary for context, from the time that we began drinking to the time that we got in bed together, at least 3 hours had passed. In this time, she had no more than 3 drinks, and I had approximately 5. To my memory, she had about 2.5 Smirnoff Ices. Andi says I said that he didn't realize how drunk I was, and I told her that she initiated sex with me and was very enthusiastic about it, and that was true. She got on top of me, straddled, and began making out with me. This was a routine way she would initiate our sexual encounters during our year-long relationship, so I sensed nothing out of the ordinary. At no point was she seeming dizzy, slurring her words, or at all incoherent during this time. I did not think she was any more than tipsy. I'd been around her drinking before. I genuinely didn't think she had too many drinks, and would have never initiated or continued having sex with her if I had any idea that something was wrong. The next morning, I woke up naked in my bed. I woke him up and asked him, "Luke, why am I naked?" And he said, "Because you didn't want to put your clothes back on." That statement Andi made is true. The tone of my response was sarcastic, coming from a place of genuine cluelessness. She regularly slept with little clothing on, and I had no idea she was fully naked, as I am not someone who touches my partners while I'm sleeping. I wasn't saying it matter-of-factly, but also didn't mean any harm by what I said. This is because at no point during this conversation, or any of our later discussions for that matter, did I feel like she was accusing me of taking advantage of her. This situation was brought up between us in conversation after the fact, where she confirmed to me that she believed I wouldn't take advantage of her and that she trusts me. Anything I said to make light of the situation was not meant to dismiss her feelings. She did seem confused that she was not wearing clothes, but I didn't feel like she was even insinuating I could have crossed the line. I have always been extremely cautious and understanding of her experience every time we were intimate. And to Andi, with everything I've said, I still don't mean to invalidate your experience. You do not deserve to go through life not knowing what happened that night. I am sorry that I came across as being unserious to a very serious matter. I really hope that you still believe I did not and never would take advantage of you in the slightest, hiding the relationship. Another thing I had to endure was him constantly making me feel like he was embarrassed to be with me. Because I was cancelled, he didn't want to associate with me too much. While Andi may have felt that I was embarrassed to be with her, this is not at all how I viewed our relationship. We began speaking and dating while long distance, and very early on into us talking, I made it very clear that if we were to pursue a relationship together, it would have to be private for the unforeseeable future. This was something she agreed on in order to move forward. Her being cancelled was not at all why we weren't public. At the time, I was growing exponentially online and couldn't predict the actions of fans. I looked for guidance from peers often and was advised that keeping my romantic relationships private would be better for everyone. Although it may have negatively affected her or us, I genuinely didn't think it would be safe to be public with her, and that is not only for my sake, but hers as well. I do realize this may have caused distress or felt unfair for her, and I never intended for that. After seeing how awful fans treated her without confirmation of us, I only assumed it would worsen if I publicized it. She mentioned I did defend her on multiple occasions, which is true. I stood behind her even when it hurt my reputation. Racism. The background for anyone that isn't aware is that Andi said the B slur publicly and received a lot of backlash online for it. This was during our relationship. While we were in the car talking about the situation, I made an idiotic comment where I said, "I mean, you are a B, aren't you?" In which I said the word once, not twice as Andi refers to in her statement. This comment came from a place of genuine ineducation, as I was confused as to why people were offended. I thought it was a slur referring to any Hispanic person, and I wrongly assumed that she could reclaim it as a Puerto Rican. After this was said, I could instantly tell that Andi was not okay with it. I apologized profusely and felt extremely guilty for saying it. I was completely remorseful and not at all smiling or laughing at her reaction. This was still an incredibly stupid mistake on my part, and in no way did I mean to offend her. I was in the process of writing my apology and he just said that. It was after this situation in the car that I helped Andi write her public apology. I did not say this while she was writing it. My little B. This part is just a straight lie. I did not say that. While I realize that this is a word I cannot and should never have said, it was not said in the context or with the words Andi claims. I wholeheartedly am sorry for ever letting this word come out of my mouth, and I can assure you that I have never ever said it again. I apologize to anyone who feels let down or has lost trust in me after hearing this. He also refused to visit me in Puerto Rico when I lived there. I did refuse to visit her in Puerto Rico, and in all honesty, this was for completely selfish reasons. I wanted to stream consistently, and this was the peak of my career. This was another instance of me being a bad boyfriend, but it was not for any other reason she may suggest. He implied that the Sharma sisters were too dark for him to be attracted to them. We were watching Bridgerton and Andi asked me if I found these actresses to be attractive. I figured, as she was my girlfriend, the best response would be to say that I was not attracted to them. and that they were not my type. My intention was literally to reassure her that she is the person I am attracted to, not to imply they are too dark. And then this combined with the fact he told me he wasn't attracted to me made me feel like my skin color wasn't attractive. All I wanted during my Bridgerton answer was to reassure Andy that she was the only person I was attracted to. This was completely unrelated to something I said to her when we were breaking up. I never said to Andy that her skin color was too dark or unattractive. Friend A. In Andy's Tumblr post from February 27th, 2024, she refers to herself and a friend of mine who hit her up. My preface is that with friend A, Andy had flirtatious interactions before, during, and after our romantic relationship. This is a much larger creator than myself, and someone I was closely associated with at the time. She says, there was some flirtation going on, but nothing serious. I was still in love with Punz, but at the time, I was in desperate need for attention and his buddy was there to provide it. Her interactions with this person were one of the largest contributors to my lack of trust and many of our arguments in the future. Andy initially messaged friend A before her and I were dating with a flirtatious message, with the desire to make content with him. Months into our relationship and after I had already moved to Florida and essentially gotten more serious with Andy, I was in a Discord call with friend A, and this friend decided to tell me that Andy had DM'd him before, but refused to disclose what she had sent to him, and she deleted her messages on her end. When I confronted Andy, she continuously said she couldn't recall what she sent, or even what it could potentially be about. Our relationship was extremely rocky, and we broke up numerous times, so I'm not sure if we were dating or technically on an exclusive break. But during one of these times is when Andy and friend A were flirting and simultaneously talking poorly about me, poked fun at the fact he broke up with me but got mad at someone else paying attention to me. She did show me messages during this time, but I distinctly remember there being missing context and areas where the conversation didn't line up, and she would intentionally hide certain things they talked about from me. I would suggest there was more, and with more provoking, she would eventually admit it and show me more of what she was hiding. This happened multiple times, and the more she showed me, the worse it got. She reassured me multiple times that there was nothing romantic between them, and that she wanted to be with me. The next day he called me and we were basically back together again. However, this time, I was meant to earn his affection. Because I did something so unforgivable and atrocious, he was basically in the clear to treat me like shit. If you could even possibly understand who friend A was to me, then maybe it would make sense why I was so emotionally distraught. Like I've said, I am aware there were instances where I acted like a poor boyfriend, but this was amidst the biggest betrayal of my entire life. I couldn't tell if she was using him to hurt me, she actually wanted to be with him more, or both. I questioned everything. Moving on to a couple months after our breakup, there was a situation where both Andy and I were invited to the same gathering with friends. At this point, things were somewhat civil and we had the same mutual friends. On an outing, Andy is looking over at my phone asking who I am talking to. I tell her the person, who is someone I later go on to have a relationship with. She proceeds to list off 3 to 4 people she was Snapchatting, and then says, "You were not going to like the last person," and then proceeds to say friend A. This was the moment that I decided I could not be civil with or associated with her any longer. There was no reason for her to even tell me that they were talking, but I only can imagine it was intentional to hurt me. I later learned that our mutual friends had been aware this was happening with friend A, as Andy told them and they advised her to stop talking to this person and that it was wrong, but she did not care. Her and friend A pursued each other well after it ended with us, which she admits herself she did intentionally to hurt even a quarter of how she did. Issues regarding this person had come up so many times by her own free will that I genuinely felt she was doing it on purpose. She wanted to make sure I knew they were talking and what they were talking about, and that I was hurt by what she was doing. Friend B. Another key point in our relationship that resulted in a lot of frustration and insecurity on my part came from Andy's interactions with another one of my good friends who has a larger platform than myself. From my knowledge, this friend didn't tell me about it until after Andy and I were together, because we began speaking privately and he didn't know. Prior to our relationship, Andy and friend B were mutually flirting to the point where she sent him explicit photos. This is something Andy flat out denied to me when I asked her, but friend B told me what happened. Later in 2021, there was a time where a large group including myself, Andy, and friend B were together. I felt like Andy was ignoring me and spending most of her time talking to and interacting with this friend, to the point where many of the other friends there found it odd and spoke about it amongst themselves and later with me. One person there even said, "It seems like Andy is all over friend B." When I brought it up to her that day, she completely denied that it was even happening. This is just one concrete instance where I felt like she gaslit me into believing that she did nothing wrong and I was being crazy and overprotective. Her insincere apology many days afterwards felt like an "I'm sorry you think that," and not an admission of wrongdoing. This was not just a friend either. This was someone she had a recent past of flirting with. This was now the second big instance that changed my perspective for the entire future of our relationship. With the confused conclusion in my head that she may have wanted my friends or other creators matters more than me, or that she settled with me just because I was willing to be with her. This made it extremely difficult to trust her in her intentions for the future of our relationship. I feel like there were a lot of instances Andi mentioned that I can agree that I was dismissive and acting like a bad boyfriend. While I do realize these experiences have hurt her, there are many situations that she intentionally not including or downplaying her wrongdoings to further villainize me. I don't believe most of my actions came out of nowhere. We argued constantly. Mental health. I am aware that I made some invalidating comments towards Andi's mental health during the course of our relationship. Overall, as she states, she has borderline personality disorder, and I was her favorite person. When she told me about her disorder, I had no prior knowledge or experience with someone who has borderline personality disorder. I felt like I was in love with her and willing to support her in all the ways that I could. Obviously, over time, the needs she had put a lot of stress on me that I hadn't expected. He would call me needy, clingy, and saying that he was trying his best but that I needed too much. That I was too much. I am completely aware of how hurtful it must have felt to Andi that I was her favorite person and I essentially couldn't handle being what she needed. I definitely told her at times that I couldn't give her what she needed, but I wish I hadn't put so much of that blame on her, and I'm sorry for that. At times, she experienced mental health crises that I felt alone and unequipped for, and I didn't know where to turn. She didn't want me to tell anyone, including her family, and I didn't want to betray her trust. This was a person I cared about very much, and was struggling so much I don't think I was fully aware that I couldn't help her. In no way do I mean to demonize BPD. I am sure I said awfully invalidating things to Andi when she needed me most, and I don't mean to victimize myself. I just wanted to be clear that this was a recurring struggle that affected both our lives, and in turn, our relationship as a whole. For further context, for example, when I was showering, I overheard him on a Discord call with George and Sapnap, and I heard George say, "If you don't go in the shower and have sex with Andi, I will." I was on my phone and Andi knew they could hear, and she was suggesting I should come do sexual things with her in the shower. I obviously did not, and this is when George said what he did. I did not stand by when George made this comment. I immediately called him out. To further back this up, Andi did not hear this comment herself, as she was already in the shower. I told her what she said myself after she was done because it didn't sit right with me. I was recovering from my eating disorder. Whenever I would crave some of these foods, he would call me fat. I feel as though the entirety of her claims of me calling her fat are heavily exaggerated and not at all how it happened. Andi did have comfort foods that we would often eat together. I have never called her fat or said she's going to gain weight from her eating habits. The most insensitive comment I ever made regarding weight, which I meant jokingly, was along the lines of, "Oh my god, we're so fat for eating this," after a big meal. I completely understand how this could have hurt her feelings, or been a trigger for her, and I feel extremely bad that this type of stupid joke I made had hurt her. In general, whenever we would get into an argument or a disagreement, he would always call me names like annoying or weird or stupid. He would raise his voice at me if I did something he didn't like. All I'll add to this is that our relationship felt toxic and full of arguments. It does not excuse my actions, but she did as much name calling and voice raising as I did. We fought a lot. I'm not proud of the boyfriend I was to Andi, but I also feel the relationship was never stable or healthy for either of us. Overall, my experience with Andi was a year-plus on and off relationship with a lot of complexities, as most relationships have. I am including a screenshot which is my last and only interaction with Andi since July 2022, and it is one I did not respond to. While I understand she may have trauma and a negative experience from our relationship was something that very heavily negatively impacted both of us, and in where we both hurt each other. This is the first I'm hearing of most of her claims listed here. It's taken me a while to collect my thoughts and give you the best response possible. If you at least hear me out, then thank you. Regardless, I am sorry for the way I treated you and the damage I may have caused, Andi. I hope you can heal from your experiences and that you feel okay again one day. And then he attaches a screenshot of the text message he got from Andi on December 18th, 2022, and keep in mind, according to Punz, he still hasn't messaged her back since 5 months prior to the time where he received this text where she says, "I know you probably won't read this or care about anything I have to say to you because let's be for real, you probably hate me, justifiably so. But I've been thinking about you a lot recently and hate how everything went down. I know it's all my fault, but I just wanted to tell you that I'm really sorry for all the things I did and said. I don't expect you to respond to this, and you shouldn't feel obligated to. But yeah, I hope you were doing okay, and that you are happy and healthy because it's what you deserve." And that's finally it for this one tweet. Except it's actually not, because while editing this video, Andi made additional statements as well as Punz. So let's start off with what Andi said in response to what Punz said on Twitter. She posted on Tumblr, "He made a statement on Twitter. I suggest you all to read it to get his side of it all. The only things I will speak on are that we remember some situations and events very differently. That he's still very close friends with friends A and B, as well as others who made objectifying comments about me. And that the text included in his statement is one I sent when I was in a state of of emotional distress over something that happened with friend A, and I felt guilty for what I did to Luke after the relationship. Clearly, it is not a reflection of how I feel now. And to Luke, I don't accept your apology because I don't think you mean it. I spoke my truth, he spoke his. That's all. Logging off. I do not need to defend myself any more than I already have, so I will not be making a longer response. I said all I needed to say in my original statement. I stand by everything I said. It was my truth. I was vulnerable and spoke genuinely about the experiences that I endured. You can believe who you choose to believe. My response was angry because I am angry, and I have every right to not forgive him. Many things that he included in his post are things that we have discussed privately, so I feel no need to address them publicly. In truth, I know that this is a he said, she said situation, and I do not want to invalidate his feelings. I think he spoke his truth, and so did I. The next day, she then makes a new post that says, "Please excuse my initial reaction. I was quite distraught after reading his statement. Now that I've slept on the situation and have more of a clear head, I can say now that I wholeheartedly do not accept his apology for a few reasons. One of us clearly remembers that night in excruciating detail. I will forever wonder what actually happened that night, and that is something that heavily weighs on me. Although the next day I accepted that he would never hurt me, I no longer feel that way. It was a very fresh wound and I wanted to believe him because I still loved him. However, after 2 years of sitting on this and reflecting, I take that back, and I felt like he was excusing his behavior by saying he didn't realize how drunk I was. Also, the fact that he shared it in such detail made me extremely uncomfortable. I respected him enough to not share such intimate details, and he did not have the same respect for me. I think he could have just said, she initiated intimacy in the way she normally did, and it would have gotten his point across well. Regardless, he still had sex with me when I was blacked out, while he was in a conscious enough state to assess and remember the encounter in such a vivid detail. That fact has not changed. 2. All the stuff about his friends is frankly of no consequence to me. Everything that happened with friend A happened while we were broken up, and bringing up friend B felt unnecessary given the fact that we all discussed the matter with each other at the time it happened. I never cheated on him, and I would like to stop that theory in its tracks. Him and I have spoken about this matter privately on numerous occasions, so that is all I will say. 3. About the shower thing. I was coming out of the shower/bathroom. He had the Discord call on speaker on his phone, so yes, I heard very clearly what George said, and Luke simply ended the call. He did not call him out. I believe he is recalling a different instance where another one of his friends said that he wanted to have sex with me once I moved to Florida. I was not witness to it, and he did tell me he stood up for me that time, which is why I didn't bring it up. I did not go into more detail about it because I was just using that one quote as an example of how some of his friends would speak about me in his presence. However, this is already more than one instance of his friends speaking about me in that way, which leads me to believe it happened quite often when I was not around. 4. Intentionally or not, I feel he demonized BPD, and used it as a way to invalidate a lot of what I said. 5. He still called me a slur when he knew it was wrong because I was getting cancelled for it at the time. I do not believe he was actually confused as to the gravity of what he said to me. I would like to remind you that I know him personally. I lived through that. When I say we remember things differently, I mean it. I think that he believes he is being truthful. However, because I know him, and I know what I experienced, I do not trust him. I do not believe that we were equally toxic. While I admit I made a lot of mistakes in the relationship, to me they do not justify all I endured. I repeat, you can believe what you want. This is a very nuanced situation, but if you were looking to me to accept his apology, I do not. And then right after this, Andy commented on another situation that is ongoing right now surrounding George is not found, that the YouTuber Dream is defending him on to some extent. I haven't actually looked at all of it because I'm doing this video first, then I'll do the George video after. But regardless, she posts about the situation by saying, I just want to say that George and Dream are genuinely two of the most arrogant, self-serving, and obnoxious people I ever had the displeasure of knowing, and the fact that they lack the self-awareness and backbone to own up to what they did and are complicit in should be of no surprise to anyone who knows them. My heart goes out to Caddy. She's too young and too kind to have to go through what she did, and is currently facing. She is so strong, and these grown-ass men deserve absolutely everything that happens to them after this. Now, you may be wondering, even though Addie is posting this, why am I bringing it up in this video? It has nothing to do with the situation that has unfolded thus far. Well, that actually was the case, but then Punz responded again to Andy and outed friend A as being Dream. So right after talking about her toxic relationship with Punz, she goes out of her way to make a post against Dream, which is the guy she left Punz to be with instead, which is the guy she's been flirting with before, during, and after her relationship with Punz. Anyways, Punz reveals this all to us in a tweet titled, My Experience with Dream. Dream is friend A as referred to in my recent statement. This is something I never never imagined would ever be brought to light. But consequently, given recent events, I think it has to be. The truth is that I've never been very close to Dream, and definitely kept him at arm's length in my personal life, especially after the way he betrayed me. To even consider me close or best friends with him is just untrue. I frequently go months without seeing or talking to Dream at all. That being said, I've also never spoken publicly against him, which I assume has led many people to believe that we are good friends, and that I support all of his actions, which is incredibly false. My best explanation for this is that I felt like I couldn't. Dream had these many interactions with my then girlfriend during the height of the Dream SMP. In all honesty, not only did I fear him, I felt like I owed him my life, that his generosity had given me my entire career, and that I'd be nothing without him. I viewed Dream as a mentor, felt like he was even my boss, and that if I crossed him, I'd be isolated and lose everything. Who would choose me over Dream? Publicly and amongst my friends, there would be little reason to take my side. Looking back, this loyalty that kept me silent on any of Dream's actions was more cowardly than anything. I told very few people what Dream did to me, and I spent much of these past 2 years wishing that even creators and friends knew the position I was in. But I didn't want it to spread, so I ultimately protected him. I remember feeling uncomfortable around him for a majority of the time, that this was a person so many people looked up to, and I knew something awful that no one else knew. The few people I confided in reminded me that there was not really anything I could do. I had to accept that and put a brave face on constantly. The thing is, I tried to talk to Dream privately many times. I expressed how awful I felt and honestly begged him to stop talking to her. His response was essentially that I was just being insecure and that he was going to do whatever he wanted. I always felt that Dream was articulate with his words, and this made it easy for him to evade taking any accountability. I think he found it amusing that he could get under my skin. In 2021, he actually voluntarily told me that my girlfriend had messaged him before we were dating. In this Discord call, he taunted me, laughed, and refused to disclose what she had said to him. Many months later, he admitted her message was along the lines of, "You should invite me to a manhunt that ends with us falling in love." He proceeded to mutually flirt with her and partook in talking badly about me with her. After my final breakup with my ex, Dream told me directly that they were just friends. I later found out that not only was that a lie, but that the same day her and I were together romantically post-breakup, she allegedly had sexual conversations with him. I'll never know the full truth of what happened between them, but I know this hurt and the betrayal has followed me for a long time. And as of now, that is about it for this entire situation, except for the original Tumblr post that Andi made, where she first started bringing up her frustrations with the relationship she had with Punz in the form of calling him one, but that was in a post where she talked about 4 relationships she had, so a lot of it is irrelevant to what we were talking about today, and Punz already quoted and hit on the most important points from that post anyways, so I feel like it would be redundant and bloated to read that, but if you really want to, I will leave a link to it in the description below. I would love to hear your thoughts on this situation in the comment section below. Don't forget to subscribe and like the video if you enjoyed, but with all that being said, thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you in another video.